Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Mondays with Matt. Matt, let's dive right into today's conversation. I was just talking to you about a minute ago before we hit record. Something's been weighing on you as you observe more and more schools kind of come through and talk to us and have conversations with us. An approach that you're seeing kind of playing out over and over again. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think the past few months, as we start to interact with different clients, we're struggling with this, we're doing this. And then I thinking to myself, my God, why are you in this situation? Like what made
Hmm.
your campus get to this point where you're now saying, hey, we need help. How do we get out of what we have embarked on or we've embarked on and we are now paying the price because we haven't done the due diligence that needed to be done. And so I was thinking to myself, like, why is it happening? And the first thing I realized is all of these folks have just listened and followed whatever others have been saying to them. It's with the trends reports, which are about adoption. So we're now starting to see some of that come into play. And what I realized was Hired hasn't stopped and said, is it the adoption trend that we should follow? Or should we really start to have due diligence around impact of that trend? Like we have 5 years now, right?
So
So
just to confirm, you're saying adoption is when a school says we're going with vendor A or vendor B,
yeah,
right? That gets reported in these trend reports. And so that's an interesting data point, but you're saying that can't be the data point which you base your multi-million dollar decision on.
yeah, and I think
Okay.
there's a couple reasons why they do it. It's easy, right? It's being able to say to their stakeholders, their bosses, their president, well, you know what,
XYZ
university
school,
is doing it.
ABC school did it. Yeah.
Yeah. And and it takes a little bit of risk off of them. Like, hey, I'm not the only CIO that's thinking about this. Look,
Hmm.
these my other peer CIO is looking at it. Now, if you were to pause and then look at that CIO that they followed, that CIO is no longer in that position,
Hmm.
probably is at another job, trying to do the same thing, never got any results. Now, if you would just pause and say, you know what, let me wait for that result to happen, then let me take my campus on it because then you could be more informed. What I keep saying to people is you have to be prepared. You gotta set expectations. And I think that's where I think schools are struggling is that they don't even set the expectations properly. They think everything is going to be okay.
So, and would you argue that the reason they aren't setting expectations correctly is because they don't even know what to expect? Because in the example you're giving, where primarily a trends report, or you bring in one of those consultants that are analysts, and they'll do a little custom report for you, but really all they're doing is saying, "Here's who's already done it. We recommend you should do it." There's no lessons learned. There's no what went wrong on the last 5 projects. How can we learn from it? What did they plan well for? What didn't they plan well for? Since none of that intel entered the process, it's somewhat of a rose-colored glasses approach, is what you're saying?
Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of, these analysts who do what they say they're doing research, right? They're sitting at conferences listening to a vendor spin, and then they come out and within hours, their propaganda that's coming out of these research, like, oh, this vendor is saying they're going to have AI in their product line. Well, in in the 2016 trends report, in 2 years, a major vendor is going to have their student system out into GA, right? We're in 2024 and that same vendor is not there, right? You just have to go back and look at the trends report. Like I can call it out. I can call it out all day. But if
Because it's in
CIO,
writing.
it's just I can say it to them. Hey, just go look at the 2016 trends report and read what they said, and then decide should you listen to them today.
Hmm. So are you finding that more and more schools that we're talking to, as you're getting under kind of the hood, so to speak, they were kind of led by trends report writers or whatever it may be, this initial very basic research of what are the 4 products in market and who sits in the top corner and all that kind of stuff, and that's making the buying decision when that should be like 5%, 10% at best
Yeah.
of the buying decision.
Well, it's that. The second part is the promises by your software
The
vendor,
vendors themselves. Okay.
hold them accountable, right? So the analysts that are being hired to come in pre, implementation, hello, you're getting paid to be to be honest and candid and
Objective. Yeah.
objective. And when someone is calling a promise, they're saying they're going to have something there, call it out. Recognize that, hey, if that doesn't happen, can you survive? Can you live
Mm.
without the promise not happening? And right now, because they can't live with it, because that's what they were depending on. They were depending on the promises of a roadmap, promises of some technology being there. And then, of course, the third element is the system integrators, who are technically, they're not neutral. They're just
They might
they're-
as well be employees of the vendor. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree. Too much weight is being put on the first piece, which should only be given 10% of the weight. It's being probably given 50+% of the weight. Then the vendors themselves aren't being held accountable for promises they're making of functionality coming up. And when it doesn't come up in 6 months or 12 months, like they said, and it takes 18 months, 36 months, or never, who's holding their feet to the fire? You would expect it's too late for the school, though, right, Matt? Like, let's say the school signed up based on a
right.
promise. It should be the analysts who are coming back going, look, you promised X, Y, and Z, and you haven't delivered. We're going to say that out to the market. This is a problem that needs to be resolved, but they keep quiet.
They keep quiet because they're sponsored, their conferences are sponsored, they have speakers that come and speak to that. Like, just look at the conflict of interest that
Follow the
happens
money. We always say follow the
follow
money.
the
Yeah.
money, right? Now, clients aren't, we can't wash their hands of this, right? So what I say is, look, when someone promises you something, don't believe it. Like, set the
Because
expectation.
there's that disclaimer somewhere, right, in the
There's a safe harbor.
document.
If you notice, everyone starts with a safe harbor. Like, oh, what we're about to tell you may not come true. Well, as soon as they say that, wash it away.
Just yeah.
Expect not to have it. Now, can you live with it in 5 years or 4 years or 3 years? Can you live with that promise not
Not
coming
having
true?
it.
Yeah, then it's okay to adopt it, because then you're at least setting your expectation. But right now, what we're seeing is schools that are underwater. Things that were automated are no longer automated. Things that they thought they can report on can't be reported on. Things that they thought was going to be a capability, sorry.
You're having
Other
to go
schools,
buy more software to produce the capability. The picture that comes to my mind as you're describing it is, it'd be like if Tesla said, buy a Tesla, we're working on self-driving cars, but they never, ever, ever delivered it. But you bought the Tesla for the sole reason of having a self-driving car, right?
yeah,
So you bought it early, expecting that a software upgrade at some point would take it, but it never happens. And you needed a self-driving car. And your
yeah.
point is, be happy with the Tesla with no self-driving car features, and then you're okay.
Then you're okay. Because
Yeah.
what other thing is, the system integrators that are putting the software in, they're configuring it. And you know what? These system integrators, they should know your business. And they should know the vendor's software, because they're supposedly certified, right?
Sure.
They know what
Yeah.
the capability. So that fit gap mindset should be like, yeah, no, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Because at that point, the system integrator has to be honest and say, you know what, you're not going to have that transfer credit, automation that you have,
Capability
or
or
you're not
whatever.
going to be able to change a major a certain way. You're not going to be able to do it. And they have to be honest about it in front before they sign the SOW on embarking on a software that doesn't have the capability to do it. And so what happens is the trends report people get their money, the
Yeah.
vendor gets the license sale and the implementation there. And then when there's nothing in the end, when we're being called in and I'm so frustrated, sure, it pays, it gives us opportunity and so forth, but that's not, we're already,
Yeah, we should be. Yeah, that's not why we want to. We don't mind coming in at that stage, but at that point, everyone's out of money. Everyone's exhausted.
yeah,
The leadership team that launched the implementation has no credibility left,
yep.
right? And now we're doing the cleanup, which is fine. But to your point, if everyone had told the truth up front and expectations were set correctly, there wouldn't be as much disappointment at this
Because
stage.
for us as Beyond, we're built to build the future campus. We're not
Right.
here to try to put you back on the rails. Like, of course, that's what we're doing, because we're now telling them the truth, because the system integrator folks, they a lot of them didn't even work at a university, didn't even right out of college designing a software. Well, hello, they don't necessarily understand academic standings the way. That's why you have a limitation on the number of academic standings. Like I'm giving you details of what happens on campus. So when people know the software, I actually know what a registrar needs. I know what a financial aid packager needs. Like, and yeah, you know what? You're missing it. And I'm being honest, it's going to be missing it. And so I could tell you that ahead of time, right? Why? Because I always say the best consultants are the ones that come in and do troubleshooting. Why?
Yeah.
Because they know everything that is in that software and isn't in that software. And you know what? We're becoming one of the best consulting groups. Why? Because we're fixing
Just
the
fixing
problem.
other people's problems.
Yes.
So if I understand this right, Matt, the point you're making is early in the implementation, if expectations were set right, there'd be less disappointment later in the process. But even if a school finds itself later in the process, you have to have a strategy, right? You have to have an approach to get out of it. Do you have any recommendations if a school finds themselves, we got enamored, we picked the vendor, we realize,
Yeah.
it's not going to work out. What do you do then?
My first thing would be to tell the president, nobody goes to a conference that they're sitting on a stage talking about how great that software is. Why? Not because of that school, because it's the schools that are sitting in that audience listening to this CIO who has put that other campus in jeopardy. And now they're about to put other schools in jeopardy because they're telling a story.
They're going in speaking for
The software. And it could be that, oh, let me tell you about the challenges we overcame. Well, honestly, that shouldn't be why you're at a conference. You should be.
and hey, look, we've been around the software vendors to know they're not going to let you talk about those things on stage. They will not.
And let's be truth be known, right? Software vendors make clients sign non-disparaging clause agreements. So they're not allowed to say what is wrong with that software. Like we can say it because we're not partnered with any of them. We're telling you that is why clients don't speak. But you know what? They're allowed to talk about all the wonderful things that's happening when it may not be happening. And they're okay with that. So you know what? As a president, the first thing I would say is, when we're having trouble in our implementation, you better not be standing on stage because you're not only going to make us struggle through this process, you're going to now make another school go through process. I would say that
one of the things I've heard you talk about a lot, and some of our key staff talk to our clients a lot about is, look, if you're moving from a highly customized on-prem system to a cloud-based system, again, you got to go in eyes wide open. A lot of what you did isn't going to be available. So how do you plan? How do you prepare? And not go in expecting this thing to actually make your life better. It's actually going to make it a little worse for a while. It's still in the long term could be great, but don't be disillusioned. Don't be delusional, right?
Set the expectations. Set the expectation that your functionality is going to be limited to what that software vendor and that ecosystem does. So you have to agree on that. If you don't agree on it, then you have to take a pause and say, are we able to live with the limitations of that software? Now, the reality of it is cloud in itself has rigidity to it, right? That is the first thing we need to understand. Cloud itself, whether we're using Excel, whether we're using our Gmail, we're using what everyone else is using, and you have to live with it. So there's this rigidity element of it. The other thing I will say is, what is the focus of that software vendor? Is it student or is it something else? Because right now, what I'm struggling with is that our student side, I hate to say it, it's in a shithole of a world at this moment because they're not really focused on student. And I almost struggle, Joe. I almost my fumes me because when some school that barely has enough money is underwater, spent $12 million, they're doing backwards work. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, because they ended up with a really amazing, let's say, HR finance system, but a crappy student experience, right? But they don't realize it till it's way down the pike. So again, setting the right expectations.
So it's interesting. I had a call with a CIO last week, and they were thinking about a new software. They needed new software, and they're like, well, our vendor is telling us they have this easy implementation. It's pre-configured. I looked at them and said, no, let me tell you all the reasons why you don't want to do that. Because if you're saying everything that we do is pre-configurable, then you in itself, you're not serving your students because you're just doing pre-configurable things, right? No, they want to do it because it's a easy way to sell into that school. And so they'll
Yeah.
say to them, hey, we have a early
Out of the
advanced,
box.
yeah, a box out of the box kind of product line. I didn't say the name of it, but I want people to realize just because you think you're going to go save money with a pre-configured, put in an Excel spreadsheet, hate to tell you, it doesn't work that way. Implementations require strategic thought, and that starts before, during, and after, because the technologies that we will need to manage campuses won't just be an SIS anymore. You're going to need a good CRM. You're going to need a good AI layer. You're going to need a good experience layer. Well, if you're going to go and spend everything on ERP, SIS, and think that's going to be your modernization, first of all, you're going to go backwards in your capabilities. Your promises aren't going to be met, and then you're going to set. So now you have to say, okay, let me just set the real expectations so that the vendor can actually be successful here.
That's it.
I think that's what I'm trying to say is let's set the expectation, and the vendor, you know what?
Will look like a rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it, Matt. I think that's what I'm taking away from our conversation today is, look, it's not that schools and vendors shouldn't be doing business together. It shouldn't be that every analyst firm should be shut down. It's just if everyone just starts being more open and truthful about the reality, if you're going to give us the good, give us the bad. If you're going to give us the upside, tell us about the risks. Educate us better, right? And then schools, to your point, need to take more responsibility for the decision and not just say, oh, because school ABC and XYZ did it, we're going to do it too. That's a horrible reason to do it. What's the reason for you? And then what's your strategy, right? What are you going to be giving up? What are you going to lose when you go from on-prem to cloud? And in that journey, how do you transform the institution along the way and have enough left to actually build the real technology stack?
Yeah.
The AI layer, the engagement layer, the stuff that actually helps the student, because neither ERP nor SIS is going to change anything for the student, really.
And you have to start focusing on that today. So if you are underwater trying to put what you've done in legacy into a newer cloud platform, well, I would tell you not to invest all of your resourcing and time and money into that, because you need to build a future ready campus. And that doesn't start with putting everything into a bucket that isn't going to get you there. So first thing is the diligence has to be done.
That's your point. I think that's my big takeaway from today. Due diligence to the power of 10. Compared to what you thought you were going to do in due diligence, do 10 times more. You'll be better off.
The reality of it is we got 5 to 8 years of data of clients. Come and talk to us. We'll tell you, hey, you're like this school, go talk to them. And they will still probably do SIS and they probably will do ERP, and that's okay. But we will set them an expectation for them to say, you know what? We spent 10 million, you know what? And we knew we're going to need to add this on. We needed to do this reporting. Hey, we knew our functionality for advising is going to be
We were going to have to change these workflows, blah, blah, blah.
And we could change things today. That's the big thing, right? So.
No, I think that's great. Thanks for that, Matt. I think for those listening, this either got your feathers ruffled or got you thinking, or maybe even got you frustrated because we named your category within our industry. And that's okay, because the conversation has to continue. And if people like you, Matt, aren't beating the drum of this conversation, it's going to go back to the way it was. All this secret under the carpet stuff, and nobody knows and no one can talk, and everyone's smiling and going to conferences saying everything's rosy. Meanwhile, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars a year are being spent with no real return. And that's unfair. It's unfair to the student. It's unfair to the staff who aren't getting pay raises. It's unfair to schools that are having to do hiring freezes. Something's got to change about this to solve for all that.
Fair to your peers that you, as a pioneer, embarked on it. You know what? Own it. Own the mistake.
And tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
Yeah. That's it. Awesome. Mondays with Matt. Great to have some of you listening in and watching. We'll see you all next week.